All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Fruits Basket, Season 3, Episode 1. The premiere of Season 3. We just had the big reveal with Akito.
Yep.
Wow. How do we continue on from here? We focus probably on just reestablishing the status quo.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, let's barrel on towards the end game.
Yep. And I gotta say, I'm very sad that, now we're actually on the final season, and it's oh, that's right, this show will come to an end. And on the one hand, I think I'll be a much more steady person emotionally after that happens, but at the same time, it's gonna be really sad.
Yeah, and now that this info has been passed along, we know a lot more of Kureno's situation with Akito, and where Akito is in the family dynamic.
Yep.
I am so ready for the show to peel back the layers even more to revealing who Akito was before they knew that they were God being or what have you.
Right, before everything took the dark turn that we are now in.
Yeah, what brought us to where we are now, and how much of this was something that was kept intentionally as a secret, or was just a strange coincidence of things with regards to Akito being a woman.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion. All right, Season 3 is here. We got ourselves a new OP and ED. They both seem very, lively and hopeful.
Yes.
Which was really cool.
Yes, because we knew that this show was going to have a happy ending eventually.
God damn it will.
Right,
yes.
so that's... You can't stop that, right?
Can't stop.
And the OP and ED do a great job of showing that. The OP in particular, holy shit, that was gorgeous.
Yeah, the backgrounds felt like they were some kind of trick of taking pictures of actual
locations,
real world locations,
and then painting over them or something,
superimposing them in some unique way.
It felt like something that I would expect in a Makoto Shinkai film or something.
Right. Yes.
It was fantastic.
Especially the bit where the rain was slipping off of the gutter of the rooftop. That straight up felt like a Makoto Shinkai film. Yeah.
If you haven't seen any Makoto Shinkai films, watch one or two and you'll get what we mean.
Okay.
But okay.
This episode gave us, I would say, a very, very specific type of breather, because we had a very slow-paced episode in terms of how much progress we made from the reveal of the finale of Season 2.
And it makes sense that we would pick up right after where that left off, because
that's a big deal.
There were a couple bombshells that were dropped,
right.
So yes, we need to see Toru's response to all of this,
how she reacts, processes,
right. and also the fact that she is needing to process the fact that what her and Momiji did to try and help Kureno and Uo get together, as it would seem right now, did not work,
and it probably won't do anything in the long term.
Yeah, I could see something coming from it, but certainly not right now. And so that's of course going to be very discouraging for her,
right?
Because she cares about Uo so much.
Yep.
Okay. And then on top of that, she's a very empathic person. So as she starts to get additional context into the situation with Akito and stuff, then of course that is a lot on top of that.
Right, and she cares about Kureno's happiness as well, so she can tell also that in the immediate sense it is hopeless for Uo because of how genuine Kureno's feelings are in this case, because there's a couple things that are unique about this in contrast to all the other Soma's relationships with Akito. Kureno doesn't have the curse.
Nope.
Kureno does not have some kind of supernatural eternal bond from a being that lives inside him that is forcing him to have a special care for Akito. That just doesn't exist. He sees himself as maybe the only person that can really protect Akito because everyone else is doing it in a compelled way.
And as a result of that, it's a different kind of compulsion.
Way different.
It's still someone that he chooses for... It's still something that he chooses for himself.
Yep.
Cool. We also got to see what it's actually like when a new god of the Zodiacs is born,
Right.
Or is birthed, like, all the way back at just the conception, right? So
Yep.
that was cool because the transition from one god to the next, even
Yep.
though we didn't see the previous god, it's good to know, right?
Yep.
It's good to be aware of.
Right.
It felt like it might have been implying maybe that Akira, the person that Ren was talking about, was maybe the previous god and or maybe her husband.
Potentially. I think it's more implied that he's the father.
Yeah, I think the father thing
and
is
then the
is
husband.
the most obvious, and then potentially the previous god, but maybe that doesn't matter.
Well, also, all we really know from that aspect, if we want to go really certain, is that he's dead.
That's true.
He's not around anymore.
Yeah, that is a good point.
And
so that would make a lot of sense for him to not be the previous god unless he died after
well,
conceiving.
I want to throw out another thing here. It doesn't make sense for him to be dead outside of a really bad, life-threatening disease. So
Yep.
I'm sensing already some foul play involved.
Yeah, some sort of abnormal situation. And okay.
Yeah.
We also got the reveal of what exactly was the context for Akito dressing up as a man, right? Because yes, I'm glad that the show brought up those points and that Toru thought of them. It's not just that Akito had like the kimono and everything like that, right? Where it could be a lot harder to tell, and then theoretically Toru might have just assumed.
Sure.
But no, there were the times when he went to the schools and things like that, and he specifically wore she specifically wore a boy's uniform, right?
Yeah,
so,
she was presenting as a man.
right. So that was not
was intentional.
Right, it was intentional. It was not just some misunderstanding or
Right.
assumption or whatever, right?
Right.
And it came from the mom since Akito was born.
Yeah.
That's something that in particular stood out to me because,
Yeah.
like, if it's something that starts like really early on, okay, but no, ever since Akito was born, to the point that only Kureno and the three of the previous generation are aware.
Right. And they've kept it that way.
And they've kept it that way.
Yeah.
That is really curious to me because
That's
then,
really curious.
because then there's got to be a very, very strong reason why Ren decided to do that, right? Because I can't imagine it was one that went over well with everybody.
No.
And given how Akito is the god of the Zodiacs and the head of the Soma family and answers to no one, what is the reason that this continues?
Yeah.
Because even in the interaction that we saw where Akito tried to strangle Ren,
Yeah.
that felt different from all of the situations that we've had previously where we've seen Akito
Get
be violent.
Yes, very different.
And I'm not and I think it's because it's Ren specifically.
Yes.
But there is the possibility that it's also because this is the final season, and if anything, this episode felt more like an introduction to Akito than an introduction to Ren. And
Sure.
so it's the different perspective, and so then, things are just portrayed a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I think it's more likely that it's just because for some reason, the other people that were around were like, no, we have to make sure that Ren specifically isn't harmed, even though they worship Akito, even though they're not members of the Zodiac, but like no one has stopped Akito from doing anything or even reprimanded Akito for doing things really.
Yeah, that is a very good point. The idea that Akito was stopped here seems like a kind of a reintroduction of Akito as being one where people are looking out for her and don't want her to suffer anymore.
Right.
But that also means then that when Akito utilizes her power, just her ability as a person to do things, her will, they can also defy her in the instance of being like, no, don't strangulate your mother.
And maybe it's because that was something that was very, like, you strangle someone, eventually they're going to die. But, like, Akito also pushed Rin from a balcony.
Yeah.
And, so, like, it's... There's this small part of me that's like, this feels like we're just going to make Akito be not as bad because Akito's a woman and because it's the final season or something. I don't think that's what it is.
Yeah.
But given that it wouldn't be that, even though some aspects of it seem like that,
we're missing another piece.
We're missing another piece, and a very important piece for what Ren's situation is here. And that perplexes me a bit because
I'm starting to feel like I can kind of tell where it's being settled towards, though. There's one Soma member that hasn't really been given their full picture and is connected to Akito, was there when Akito had a rough moment as a child and comforted Akito.
Oh, Shigure?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Shigure seems like the kind of person who's lost something, like actually had something, and like feels vitriol towards Akito for taking that away from him. And in a lot of ways, the fact that Ren hates Akito feels like, oh, of course Akito's only living parent is someone that hates Akito.
Right, like
we've seen what happens when Zodiac parents go bad, basically. It gets really bad.
And that's a very common thing to happen, so okay.
But I think that that's something where we could be seeing actually a parallel where they're even potentially like aligned in goal, like in maybe what they Shigure and Ren.
Possibly, I could see that because one of the other things that I thought was kind of odd about how this episode was done compared to other Fruits Basket episodes is that the most traumatic thing to me that Ren did to Akito was forcing her to present as male. The things that she was saying about the curse and everything, that's insensitive and harsh, but like that's something that I would think would be really good for Akito to hear every once in a while. Like, it
doesn't matter to Akito though.
Right, it doesn't really matter to Akito. And that thing that was the most like potentially harming that Ren did, that Akito had done to them, we didn't actually get to really see any of the context and the decisions for it and things like that.
Yeah, because it's not relevant yet. It's something that will obviously be brought into more focus later. I think it's more the idea that imagine if you, as a child, were forced to present the opposite from where your nature is or what have you, to the point where you actually accept that.
No, right? Yeah, exactly.
Like,
no, that's why it felt strange to me that we didn't get to have that more shown of like what Akito's struggle was with that. And I guess it's maybe just being saved for another episode.
Yeah. It's just it would involve a flashback. It would involve like a full on contextual flashback. And you wouldn't want to do it multiple times. They have to do it once. And they have to do it like really hard and really well.
Sure, and I guess because also this is the first episode of the season, even if
we want to focus on Toru.
We want to focus on Toru. We need to sort of set the foundation of like even not thinking about this in the anime because it would have been like this in the manga too. You need to set the foundation for what the next stage of conflicts in the direction of the story is, because you just had a bunch of big shifts in how we understand
and how
the
we
story.
Perceive things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that would be like going immediately to 11 to then show that in detail here.
I think the main thing right now is that we're getting a new side of Akito being explored through the dynamic with her mother, and then also getting officially introduced to her mother,
right,
who is a character that fills a very weird niche in being a Soma kind of, but not being a Zodiac,
right,
but also being antagonistic towards Akito,
and potentially having some role over Akito even after Akito's been made the head of the Soma family.
Well, not necessarily that. I don't necessarily buy that. I more think of it as the thing of where it's the twisted form of like, when you have the mother of God, basically, she gets special privileges, and that it's like, well, we don't want her to die, you know?
Right.
We already lost the father of God.
However that happened.
But however that happened, we don't want to lose the other, because who knows, maybe Akito did kill her father. Like that's very much a thing that could have happened.
Who knows? Yeah.
There was a little flash of someone that definitely felt like it was meant to be Akito's father.
Yeah. Akira?
And he was very like he seemed very sweet. He seemed like a good person from the brief little glimpse we got. But I think I'll hold off judgment on that until we see like an actual backstory focused on the mother, because I think they're going to use that as a way to combine things with Shigure and then also Akito.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because at the very least, Shigure, Ayame, and Hattori had probably the most kind of close connection with the family of Akito because of their dream, that their shared experience of like, oh, this brought us and we're waiting for you. So then what was the process like of watching her go through pregnancy, birthing?
They would have seen
Akito.
that whole journey. And
they probably were like older brothers, like officially for Akito, you know?
Right. And yet Ren is someone that Akito, at the very least, has deemed dangerous enough, not just to Akito, because that would make sense, right? She's been bad to Akito, okay. But no. You also aren't supposed to interact with any of the other Zodiac members. Now, maybe that's because she has these beliefs and opinions about the curse, and so Akito's like, hey, that could potentially harm my connection to them, because but at the same time. Possible. It felt like when Akito very much stood up to try and like defend Hattori from her, it didn't feel to me like it was something that was Hattori's my possession, like we've seen Akito be most of the time. It felt more of the you are a dangerous outsider.
Yeah, I think
stay away.
I think the difference is that there's no implied romantic anything here, and that's the difference with Akito's previous things where there'd be male and female interactions and stuff, is that it'd be like, no, that's a love thing that I wouldn't have, any kind of connection with. But with this here, I could see this being a thing of where Ren potentially being the mother of a previous god, potentially, means then that she just knows things. She's privy to kind of the experience, what it's like for someone like Akito to exist at all by being maybe married to the previous one.
Sure.
Where it's just like no, this is your punishment. This is basically what I've deemed for you as the head of the house. Like, no, you're just gonna stay in your room. You're gonna be isolated from everybody, and it's kind of like vengeance in that regard of like, I've been isolated from, the world, from all these like
Ren's getting vengeance?
No. Akito's getting vengeance on
right.
Ren.
Yeah, you locked me up in a room, so now I'm locking you up in a room.
Yeah, now I'm locking you up.
Sure. Okay.
It's the same way of, no, you don't get freedom. You don't get any of that. And that's why they cover for her, is that she's important to Akito in the same way that it's like the special prisoner.
Sure. And then
of course they both hate each other because of, the whole experience that they've probably gone through.
And then maybe that's also something where, because the other thing that kind of feels interesting about this is that if this is the dynamic between Akito and her mom, even if there was never, like, Dad was never around at any point, right?
Sure.
At some point, we reached a situation where other people in the Soma estate, not necessarily members of the Zodiac, but sometimes members of the Zodiac, ended up basically being charged by themselves or otherwise to take care of Akito in some way. And we see that with things like, Akito needs a playmate, right? And you get Yuki and things like that. But the mom hasn't been present for any of that. I fully buy that now Akito would have gotten to the point where at some point before now, Akito basically said, you're going to stay locked up in your room as revenge for how you treated me. There's a
transition point.
There's some transition point. But
and I think that's going to be the thing where we basically bring Shigure into the mix, because Shigure has this deep-seated also like animosity towards Akito,
Right.
but also is like wanting to be close to Akito, and also was literally there at the point when Akito snapped, because there was a point when Akito was okay, and then we see something happened. Shigure's there comforting Akito. Akito then goes back to be playmates again with Yuki,
and it goes all down from there,
and just goes ape shit. Like it's just awful. So I think that's the point either where Akito's father died, or something broke within the the family dynamic in general,
right?
And it just had the first element of negative impact hit Akito the hardest, because she was the god and maybe has her and I guess her supernatural connection with all of them.
The other thing that kind of makes me wonder about this is that because we see Shigure specifically going from being aware that Akito has been conceived, oh, we've been waiting for you,
right,
to hating Akito, and we don't know what caused it, but we know that the relationship started that positive back then. I'm wondering what changed, and it could totally be something where it's just Shigure ended up not liking the bond, and it could be something as simple as that.
Okay.
But if it's something that's more than that, I'm really curious how that would come about, because Akito seemed fairly harmless and sort of like a normal kid up until what it seems like Shigure sent her on a downward spiral. So was it because of maybe some connection that Shigure had with Ren, and Ren hated Akito or something like that? Or and so Shigure ended up sort of acting as a proxy, or what's the deal? Like, I feel like this episode ended up opening up a lot of questions after we got a lot of answers in the finale of the previous season, and I'm just really curious to see them get answered now.
Yeah. The setup here, though, kind of gives us a nice kind of compartmentalized look at Akito's, basically our now true perspective on Akito's family situation.
Right.
So we didn't even think about that before.
Yep.
Now, we move on to Toru's, who, her family, her bonds, her people around her, all rush to her. They sense the waves of her crying out like a shout
so
on
awesome.
on the town air. This is something that is special. It's cute. It's wonderful. I could also see it being a thing where Isuzu Rin saw her there crying, and just straight up called Hana and was like, hey, can you come pick her up?
Toru alert,
Toru alert. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I love that we got everyone to basically spend a little bit of time with the core cast with Toru, showcasing that in a lot of ways, while she is exactly like Kureno, I mean, very similar to Kureno, this is also, in some ways, set up again for how we'll save Akito. The idea that what Akito needs most is exactly what Toru got this episode.
Yep.
And the thing is that Kureno is, helpful, very much so. But Kureno is ultimately spending himself like Toru has been, off and on.
Exactly.
Toru's she's stronger, she's gotten better at this, she's grown a lot. But this is the area where she probably has the most likelihood of experiencing a form of emotional burnout, where if she's not getting basically or giving really opportunities for those around her to love her, to feed her in that respect, she's just going to end up spent. And that's something where I love that the second half of the episode was basically entirely that. Because that's where this show needs to end up at. That's exactly where this show needs to end up at.
And I really appreciate that when Kureno went back to Akito, Akito did slap him. The situation with Akito is not better.
Nope.
Not fixed, and certainly not fixed, but not even better as a result of any of this new information.
Nope.
We understand Akito better. The situation is still just as fucked.
Yep.
So, okay.
Right. And now, Yuki, Kyo, Shigure, they got her back at the house.
Yep.
They all have their unique little, oh, good, she's back.
Right.
And Kyo can't even look her in the eye when she's that cute. He's like, oh,
Right.
Whatever.
But he recognized her scarf when it got blown somewhere completely different, and he got it and washed it, and awesome.
And fucking Yuki, when he walks in and sees the two of them having their cute little moment, just smiling like the big fucking shipper that he is, and he's like,
yeah,
okay, this is really wonderful.
Uh-huh.
And also showcasing in some ways, season 2 happened.
Right.
Yuki is a very different person. He did not antagonize Kyo at all this episode.
And in fact,
nothing.
Yeah. And he tried to help all three of them out by being like, hey, I'm not talking about Toru. I'm talking about him, Kyo, and Shigure.
Right.
By being like, I'll take a stab at making dinner. Now, he wasn't good at it.
Yeah.
He wasn't good at it.
Yeah, that was before when she wasn't back. Yeah.
No, I know. But I feel like that is also a showcasing of his growth from season 2, because
he's willing to try something and fail, and it's
exactly
okay.
right. That I'm sure that dinner did not taste princely, right?
No, it probably was awful.
It was probably awful, right? Just the memory of it was
enough to make Kyo want to spit out his milk,
right? But he still did it. He gave it his best shot, That's what counts.
Yeah, and I love that these characters all have very different relationships with Toru, the 3 boys, and having them all kind of have their moment of like, wow, we are so appreciative to have you back. The fact that you're here does our lives something good. Your presence enriches us.
Yep.
That was something they all showed and told effectively in their own unique ways.
Right.
And the fact that they're all Somas. They've all got their own family, reminding us again, in case it had been a thing where the focus had gotten too specific to the point where we had missed the general theme of found family here. That, there is something that is stronger even than the curse in some ways.
Right.
And that's the power of just a family loving each other.
Yeah.
So, fucking love this show. And, we've got a short season, so in some ways, I am extremely excited, nervous for how they handle a one cour season to end things off, because I really don't think there's too many plot lines actually left to resolve.
Nope.
It's more that there's just so many characters that you have a limited amount of time to choose with how you spend it. So I think already in this episode they're kind of telling us, okay, Uo's thing with Kureno, we're already closing that off here.
That's another story.
And
it makes sense, because from a real estate perspective, when you only have one cour and you just introduced effectively 2 new characters that are going to be the core characters of this
1.7 characters.
Right, 1.7 characters. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And they're going to be the main crux of the conflict for this finale of the show. You need to spend a lot of time with them. Yeah. And that means that we'll probably get less of those wonderful slice of life, just sort of, happy, fluffy moments, right?
Yeah.
But, it's for a purpose.
It's for a purpose, and I think they're going to bring a lot of the cast together for bigger interactions from the Akito side of things, which I'm really excited for, because if Akito's story is moving more personal, that means that most likely the biggest thing that we can expect to get out of this really is a true saving of Akito.
Yep.
The more and more the story moves away from Akito as being a head of the Zodiac, but being a scared, crying little girl, I am really excited for the switch, because I really don't think this story needs a villain necessarily. I think it's just a story about broken people, and having Ren be brought in and not being immediately a greater evil than Akito, being just another fucked up family member.
Right, someone who...
The pattern that we've seen all throughout since the beginning of the show.
Yeah, someone who's a shit parent, basically.
Right, a shit parent that goes right up there with, Yuki's, parents and Kyo's...
but not breaking new territory.
Parents. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we can just have everyone come together eventually around a table, and we'll have a celebration,
Right.
And we'll be able to build new relationships, new bonds on a clear, open surface.
But
I'm just really excited for that. The ED also felt like it was cleverly edited to avoid spoilers, but it felt like there were some gaps of where there were like some
there was going to be something
happy
shown
things
there.
Because I saw the Hiro Kisa thing where there was a little kid with them. And if we get a time skip 10 years later, where are they now thing, like later in the season,
But before we get to any kind of dealing with Akito as the scared girl, first we need to get to the point where we can earn unpacking that.
Yep.
Because right now there's the people who know that that's who she is inside, but that is buried very deep. Akito has made sure that that is not at all something that people are going to see.
Right.
So, we
Toru start the domino effect.
Start the domino effect. We saw how long it took some of these characters' arcs to run their course in the previous seasons. So, there's a lot of work ahead.
Yeah, I very much feel like it's going to be a Toru starts the domino effect, ping, and then it just like quickly.
Right.
I mean, like
it's not something that can be stopped. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's going to be like 6 episodes, 7 episodes. Things are going to be barreling.
One thing goes into the other, and
Right, and then that cascades even faster to the point where it's then like probably within like 6 or 7 episodes, we're probably going to see like where the end is, and then it's just then collapsing everything back in on itself for a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm really excited. And we're starting the final season of Fruits Basket.
That's right.
Y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get an early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access. You can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all
Next time.